We're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm Ron Feldner. I'm the Chief of Water Resources with the City of Savannah. We've got a lot of city staff here tonight, got name tags on, and they'll be introducing themselves throughout the evening. We've also got Denise Grabowski, who is with Symbiosity. She's going to be assisting me with the presentation this evening. We've got an interesting evening plan for you, if you will. We've got a slideshow to start, and then we've got some breakout sessions where we're going to be moving people around to learn a little bit more about the city and our stormwater management program, the drainage issues that we're working on a daily basis, and looking for input from you all. So that's a big part of what we're doing tonight, is getting feedback from the community on the issues that are important to you when it comes to drainage and stormwater management. So we'll jump right into it. Why are we here tonight? Well, we've got some interesting pictures. These pictures are from here in Savannah. I said to somebody earlier, these pictures aren't from the Ohio Valley or someplace around the country. These pictures are from Savannah. I think that's Whitaker Street last July. This on River Street, down in the parking lots that are down there along the river. This is, I believe, on the south side of the city. Someone obviously put a sign up there to show that we've got a lot of standing water in the street. And I believe this is over off the Tremont Road area. So these are the types of issues that we're dealing with on unfortunately, a more frequent basis here in the city. And as a result of it, we've decided to look at some different ways to enhance what we're doing with stormwater management here in the city. And those of you that have had to deal with some of these issues, you've been traveling around in recent months, in the last few years, these are quite inconvenient events when they do occur. And we're going to talk a little bit more about these specific events and of course some of the things that we're currently doing to try to address them, and some other activities that we're going to be implementing and incorporating to what we're doing on our daily basis to try and enhance our ability to provide service delivery when it comes to stormwater management. Our agenda here tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to Denise for a few things here. Talk about Stormwater 101, just kind of an overview of what stormwater management is. The Savannah drainage system, that's really important in terms of what are the components of the drainage system that we manage and operate on a daily basis. I talked a little bit about recent rainfall events. What are our responsibilities as a stormwater department here in the city, and how do we undertake those activities, both during rainfall events, but of course in advance and in preparation of when they're going to occur. Stormwater utility, this is a new concept that we're looking at here in the city, something we're evaluating as a way to get more resources into the stormwater department in terms of manpower, equipment, financing for operations. So we want to talk about that a little bit, as well as what we're currently doing to fund stormwater management in the city. We've got a lot of different revenue streams that we're trying to blend together to get the right mix of money that we can then perform the activities that are necessary. And then we're going to do breakout sessions where you're able to go see and talk to different people within the stormwater department in terms of what types of activities and services we're providing, and provide your input to that. So with that, Denise Grabowski is going to come up and talk a little bit about Stormwater 101 and give you a little overview.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Thank you all so much for being here. It is a pleasure to have you here and spend a little bit of your time. We know how valuable your time is. And Ron has already talked about stormwater a lot, but we think it's really important to have a common understanding of what stormwater really is, where it comes from, and why we have to talk about it so much. So stormwater is basically water that falls onto what we call impervious surfaces. And that basically means a surface that cannot penetrate. And it goes from your driveway into the street, into what we call catch basins. Those are the inlets that you see at corners and grates. And then it goes into the system that the city of Savannah manages, pipes that are underground, and eventually it reaches our natural waterways. So anything that falls on the street eventually will make its way to one of our natural waterways. And in a natural environment, stormwater works very differently than a built environment. So in a natural environment, you have about half of the rainwater that infiltrates into the ground. So it's soaked up by the ground and doesn't really leave that site. But in an urban environment like where we live, the number is much higher of what runs off. It's about over half the stormwater runs off of those surfaces and into the city system. So that's the water that the city of Savannah is responsible for managing, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. When we talk about flooding, there are different causes of flooding. So you might wonder sometimes, like, why is it flooding now and why does it not flood all the time? Urban flooding is what we see a lot of here in our community, where we have especially heavy rainfall that falls a lot at one time and causes flooding onto the streets and unfortunately sometimes onto property as well. Coastal flooding, anybody recognize this picture? Road to Tybee, right? So what we're seeing here in Savannah sometimes more frequently is what we call sunny day flooding, where we will actually see flooding happening when it's not even raining. So there's a lot of causes behind that, but in particular, it's influenced by the lunar phases of the moon, and it's also influenced by sea level rise. So as we see conditions changing that are beyond our control, we see these events occurring more frequently, and that's what we think of as coastal flooding. Riverine flooding is what we experienced so drastically last year with Debbie, where the Ogeechee River was flooding, and it was flooded before it even reached Chatham County. And so the water that wanted to go to the Ogeechee River really had nowhere to go. And so it backed up into properties throughout the city of Savannah. And where does it go once it goes in those storm pipes? It goes into huge pipes that look like this. This is a tunnel right here in the city of Savannah that's over 100. How old is this tunnel, Zach? Late 1800s. We still have tunnels like this throughout the city of Savannah. You can imagine that these tunnels aren't as effective as they used to be, and they need a lot of maintenance and upkeep and restoration. We're also talking about drainage basins or watersheds. So water, depending on where it falls throughout the city, is going to eventually end up in the Savannah River or the Ogeechee River. Most water that falls in the city of Savannah and Chatham County actually ends up in the Ogeechee River. A lot of people think it goes to the Savannah River, but the majority ends up actually in the Ogeechee River. And this is a map of all of the drainage basins, and I think we have this one upstairs. But if you look here, you may wonder, why does it flood one place one day and it's not flooded somewhere else on that same day? It's because each of these basins is like a sink or a bowl. So if you think about your bathroom sink, no matter where a water drop hits in that sink, it's always going to go down the drain. So you can think of each of these basins as an individual sink, and the water is going to flow different directions. They then come together into the tributaries, the smaller rivers like the Vernon River, that eventually flows out into the Ogeechee. So these are very interconnected systems. And so our stormwater management strategy has to take into account the geology and the natural shape of these watersheds. Sometimes the boundaries are natural and sometimes they're man-made based on roads or railroads, etc. So the drainage system in the city of Savannah is incredibly complex, and these are just some of the statistics, but I want to draw your attention in particular to the miles of pipes. Over 400 miles of pipes and over almost 150 miles of ditches and canals. That is more than if you go to Atlanta and back. That's the length of canals and ditches and pipes that the city of Savannah is responsible for maintaining. We have tide gates. Tide gates are incredibly important. We talked about the coastal flooding. So when we get a heavy rain event and it's a high tide, that water is trying to push in as the city is trying to get water to push out, and the pump stations are key in pushing that water out. And Zach will talk more about that in one of the breakup sessions. Some of the challenges we have is expansion as the city continues to grow and develop, the system age when we have pipes dating back to the 1800s, the impacts of climate change and increased flooding events, and then capacity. We have to make sure that we are able to manage the stormwater so that when we do get these heavy rain events, that water can be moved out into the system and away from properties. So recent rainfall events, these pictures again probably will look very familiar to you. We heard a lot about the traumatic flooding in Tremont Park, where it's not only roadways that are being flooded, but houses, so personal property. So it's incredibly important that we're able to address these flooding issues. And we saw, undersized infrastructure is one of the things that we know we need to be able to remedy to be able to address these issues in these neighborhoods. Tide cycles was also an important factor at this one. I mentioned earlier Tropical Storm Debbie, where we had flooding in areas that people may not really expect to see flooding. And this can be made worse by development that doesn't even happen here in Chatham County, but by upland areas where more stormwater is coming through the Ogeechee River. So again, that water is already there, and the water that falls here has nowhere to go. So Team Savannah's responsibilities. I think this is where I'm going to turn it back over to Ron to walk us through this and the stormwater utility.
The city stormwater management program really functions in these three main areas. Drainage system maintenance and operation is a huge part of what we do. Our regulatory compliance aspect of what we have to accomplish on an annual basis, which really breaks down to almost a daily basis, is part of our permit compliance. And then we have a capital improvement program that's very large scale, dealing with multi-million-dollar projects that deal with flood control, drainage system operation, as well as water quality. So the stormwater utility concept that I opened early on here and talked about a little bit is a new concept that the city of Savannah is considering as a possible implementation program that can help us better deal with some of the issues that we've talked about here today. Stormwater utilities are not new in Georgia. They've been around since the late 90s. There's about 75 programs of this type in the state of Georgia. And some of our neighbors actually have this kind of a program. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here. So the city currently operates 3 pipe systems, and you may have heard us talk about this in the past. And those 3 pipe systems are the water and sewer pipes, which of course we're all very familiar with. And we've had a dedicated source of funding for that for many years. And that operation is pretty well established and mature. And as the revenue comes in, we're able to deal with our potable water and our sanitary sewer issues pretty well. The third pipe system is stormwater, and currently there's no dedicated source of funding for stormwater, and that's what makes it unique from the other 2. So what we're talking about here is looking at a system, stormwater utility in this case, where this third pipe system would have a dedicated source of revenue, just as water and sewer have historically. So in the stormwater management program, how we currently fund stormwater operations is through general fund revenues, which is a municipal tax system. And obviously property taxes are based on parcel value, just as sales taxes are based on the purchase amount of that particular good. So general fund revenues don't really take into account the use of the system or the demand that you place on the system or the corresponding services we provide, because once again, it's a tax-based system. On the water and sewer side, the amount of water that you use or the amount of sewer that you send for treatment obviously is something that's based more on your consumptive use of that particular service that we provide. Special purpose local option sales tax, or SPLOST, we're talking about that here tonight a little bit more. A lot of drainage money has been annually and periodically appropriated to the capital program. One unique thing about SPLOST is that SPLOST money can only be used for capital projects, not maintenance. And our maintenance operation is a very large operation, so that has to be funded outside of SPLOST, so that SPLOST can be dedicated to the capital program. So federal and state grant funding is another particular funding stream we look at. We've had some success with grant funding in the past, but those are also project specific. Grant funding does not cover maintenance of the system. And then public-private partnerships is another tool that we've used successfully in the past, where the city works with developers that are building projects to cost share in some of the capital investment that's made there. One example of that is the Bilbo Canal that's over there off of East President Street. The widening of the canal that happened very recently was through a public-private partnership with the developer that built the apartment complex there. So you can see we're constantly looking for different ways to bring revenue into the system so that we can have the resources we need to operate a successful stormwater program. Now, the stormwater utility from an overview perspective, once again, operates like other user fee-based systems, water, sewer, and sanitation. Those revenues are dedicated exclusively to stormwater management, just like water and sewer revenues are dedicated to water and sewer operations. The customer's bill is based on the amount of stormwater runoff that you generate. So therefore, a property that has a greater amount of runoff is going to have a greater or larger stormwater fee associated with it, and it applies to all developed properties. In Savannah, we have quite a bit of properties that do not pay property tax. They're tax exempt through whatever means that's associated with their taxable situation, but yet they do contribute runoff to the drainage system. And as a result, by not paying property tax, they therefore have a disproportionate contribution to what we have to pay to deal with the runoff in the system that's generated by all properties, as was described by Denise earlier. So we feel like a stormwater utility is a more equitable way to fund stormwater management services than a tax-based system. So once again, stormwater utility overview, impervious area is what results in the customer's fee based on the amount of runoff. You can secure credits under a stormwater fee program if you reduce the amount of contribution of runoff through, say, a detention pond or a rain garden, something like that. You would obviously have a lesser contribution of runoff to the system, and therefore your bill would be reduced. In the case of how the bill would occur, it would go out with our monthly utility bill, sanitation, water, sewer, and possibly stormwater in the future. Here's an interesting example of two different parcels. In this case, you've got a commercial parcel here and a residential parcel here. They have the same taxable value, so to speak, but the impervious area of this commercial property is 3 times as much. So under a taxing scenario, they would pay about the same amount of property tax, but obviously they have a much different contribution of runoff to the drainage system. So under a user fee system, this particular parcel would pay proportionally more than this one here because of the greater amount of runoff and the higher amount of services that the city has to provide. As I said earlier, stormwater utilities have been around the state of Georgia for about 25 years now. Going back to the late 90s, there's about 75 of these programs around the state currently. And we've got several local folks that are using the stormwater utility program successfully to deal with their drainage and stormwater needs. And we've given a few examples here. And the age of some of these ranges all the way from Hinesville, I think back to like 2005, Garden City about 2009, and then Macon more recently, I think in about 2021. So cities and communities are looking at this particular type program more and more as they look for, once again, the opportunity to bring more resources into the stormwater management service delivery programs that they operate. We talked about the equity aspect of how a stormwater fee differs from property tax. And I think that this slide gives a very good example proportionally what different types of customers pay. And this is the Garden City example. And what we've done is we've broken down different customer types or examples and then how much they would pay in a fee per month. Garden City's fee for a residential customer is $4.75 per month. And you can see that as the amount of impervious increases on the particular parcel, the amount of the fee increases proportionally. So a bank branch or a hotel pays 13 or 36 times the amount of a residential parcel because the amount of runoff generated is proportionally that much larger. We get down here into truck container yards and warehouses, and you can see that there's quite a bit of stormwater runoff generated by these properties, and the corresponding fee is shown accordingly here. So that's the idea behind how the stormwater utility concept works, is that the greater the amount of impervious area, the greater amount of runoff, the larger the fee because of the larger service delivery. Once again, the opportunity for any of the customers to receive a credit by reducing their contribution of runoff to the system is something that's part of any program. So a couple of key points, we've talked about this already. There is a handout that's moving around the room that talks about what the different credits are for different stormwater programs, stormwater utility programs around the state. Something that, once again, I think is worth looking at, because we've got everything from detention ponds to rain barrels for residential houses as credit opportunities that we want to make available as part of the proposal that this would encompass moving forward. So the next steps that we're going to take as part of this exercise to gain feedback and input from the community and share with the community what we're doing regarding drainage and stormwater operations here in the city. You can see the different things that we have going on over the next, well, currently ongoing, and then over the next many months. Tonight, obviously, is our first round of community meetings. We want to do some later in the year. We're also talking about putting together a focus group in between the two sets of community meetings, so that once we get the feedback from the community here early on with this first set of meetings, we can take it to the focus group, talk to them about what the community is telling us they're looking for in terms of different services from the city, in terms of our stormwater program, and then trying to better shape what the program would look like going forward as we put together what we'll call the final proposal that the stormwater program and stormwater utility would look like. The technical work is ongoing. There's some technical information you're going to find in the breakout groups tonight, so certainly ask questions about that. And then this is a key one, the recommendation to City Council. Ultimately, the decision of whether or not a stormwater utility program is set up in any community, especially in the case of the city of Savannah, this is an action of the City Council, a decision that they make based on what they feel is the best path forward for the city, the best interest of the community and you all as citizens. Our job is to get the input from you, to put this together into a package that they can understand and that we would present to them, so that they could then have deliberations later in the year to make a decision as to whether or not this particular approach would be something that the city would want to move forward with. And if they decided to do that, then it would be undertaken through an ordinance process at a city council meeting. So once again, it's all kind of rolling up to the end of the year and us sharing the information throughout the community, bringing it back to the city council and having those discussions. Tonight we've got breakout sessions. The 4 breakout sessions are shown here. I believe that you've got some information when you came in about kind of how you're going to move around to the different sessions. But a lot of the things that you see up here on the screen now, we've already talked about. And this is your opportunity to learn more about these different elements of what we do in stormwater management here at the City of Savannah, but also to provide your input and your feedback to the city staff in terms of what is important to you as a citizen, as a customer of the city, so that we can, once again, better shape our service delivery model going forward when it comes to stormwater management services in the community. We've also got 311 here. So if you've got a particular issue that is pressing in your neighborhood or associated with your property, 311 here is here to take details about that, so we can set up a work order and be responsive to that. So a couple pictures there. Denise, you look much better than I do. But anyway,
Anthony added that.
I'm Ron, once again, Denise over here. I'll be staying here to talk about stormwater funding, I believe, in this room.
Mm-hmm.
And then Anthony, you want to talk about how we're going to break out into the other rooms real quick?
Of course. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Anthony Cass. I'm the Water Resources Administrator. So the way it's going to work is when you came in and got your name tag, you would also got a number. So for those of you that came to our previous community meetings, you remember that we broke out into breakout, we went to breakout sessions. So whatever number you have is what breakout session you're going to go to. So if you have number 1, you'll stay here in this room where Ron and Denise will lead the funding session. If you have number 2, 2, 3, and 4 will all be upstairs. 2 is going to be for flooding. 3 is going to be for CIP and operations. And then 4 is going to be for our Stormwater 101. And we also have refreshments over here, so if you want to grab a water or some snacks before you go to that, you can feel free. But if you need any guidance or anything like that, we got staff around to help you move from place to place.
And also, don't forget, SPLOS folks are here tonight to get some feedback for the upcoming SPLOS referendum later this year. Drainage is a huge part of SPLOS. So we obviously knew it was important for them to be here tonight to share overall what the program is shaping up to be and what the city's looking for on feedback and input regarding that process. But once again, drainage is a big part of SPLOS, so having them here tonight was the natural. But yeah, so we're.
And so, yeah, and each breakout session will be 15 minutes, so you'll just rotate around. So every 15 minutes up, we'll notify everybody, then you move to the next number, of course, going up. So those are kind of how it's going to work. You got
And
any
then we'll come
questions
back
when
here.
you get there? Because these breakout sessions are for you to get more details on what you talked about, and then also provide feedback. So
And then we'll end
the
here.
purpose of the breakout
And then
session.
we'll end here, right?
Yes, and we will end here briefly to wrap up. Yes.